Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock and time for the Daily Word from St. John Methodist Church. I'm Pastor Ronald Genaro. Today is our Bible study edition, and so I have several announcements for you. We did have to cancel Silver Sneakers today because we had turned off all the electric power to the fellowship hall because we're putting in a new generator. Should we have a storm. That will help us, and it will run everything, including the air conditioning units. We are so excited about that. Lenten services tomorrow. We have a service at noon here at the church in the sanctuary. Every Wednesday until April 9th, we will have a service. We want to remind folks that the Lenten offering is a designated offering. There are envelopes or banks you can take and use either one. Please set that on the altar rail when you wish to turn that in, but and you can turn it in anytime right up until Easter. And one half goes to a mission called Joy in the Harvest Mission. That's in Tanzania, Africa. And then one half towards the Florida Global Methodist Church annual conference offering. We're asked to take an offering every year and bring that up at annual conference in June. And we just, for 30 years, I've done it before during Lent. Bible study is today, as we're doing, and 1 o'clock on Tuesdays. It's generally every Tuesday. We will not meet during Holy Week because Holy Week will have a lot of additional services. We'll start announcing next week that we're also going to do something very special on Good Friday at noon in the fellowship hall, and we'll give you more information next week. Easter egg hunt will be Saturday, April 12th. You can start bringing your candy and plastic eggs. There is a box in the narthex. We have released an app, and we have the announcement for it, but I know some folks are having a little bit of trouble with it. I will have more information sometime later in this week or early next week so that we can clear it up and make sure that everybody can use it properly. Most folks are not finding they're not able to find the directory, and so there's a glitch, and we're trying to work through that. I have it. I don't know why it's not working for everyone else. If it usually, and Bob, you have the directory in it too?
I have to check directory.
Okay. All right. Soup and sides, ladies' luncheon. The ladies are providing, the ministry is providing the soup. That's what I understand. So we're asking folks to bring a side to share. That's going to be Saturday, March 29th at 11:30 a.m. in the fellowship hall. Sign up is available in the narthex. And there will be a devotion by my friend, Pastor Debbie Mack. She is the pastor of the Frostproof Methodist Church in Frostproof. Also, we're going to skip the next announcement, but fellowship dinner this Friday evening is a fellowship dinner at 5:30, and it is Italian. I asked if somebody just brought me, if that counted. They said, no, it's got to be an Italian dish. My wife said, I am quite a dish. But, brum, boom. They said, no, something to eat. So they're doing that, and I encourage you to come and be a part of that as well. The jokes will hopefully get better. Lifeline screening will be Thursday, March 27th in the Education Building. You need to register online with Lifeline screening. We do know that their page comes up with our previous name, and but it's not. I mean, we've told them, and they can't edit it until the next time. Treasure Trove will return in March of 2026. It is not taking place today or this week or any time in 2025. We're taking a little bit of a rest. Parkway Food Ministry, you know about that ministry. Non-perishable foods, peanut butter, canned goods, and cereal. We try to do, whenever we see a buy one, get one that is something like this, we'll either buy that and give both of them, or we buy one if we need it and then give the other one. We're skipping the next one because we've already had that. Faith and Fellowship with Pastor Dorman is on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. In the Education Building. It's a brown bag small group for your faith, fellowship, support, and prayer life. And then Theology 101 only has, I think, another 2 weeks left, and then that will stop at that time. We are in Genesis. We are in chapter 41. We're going to begin with a word of prayer at this time. Gracious God, we thank you and we praise you for your presence with us today. We ask that you would speak to us and through us as we study your word. May your grace, your mercy, and your peace be ours, we ask, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, in chapter 40, we had a little interlude, which was Judah and the Tamar story, which is an awful story. I freely admit it. It is an awful story, but that, the Bible doesn't shy away from those stories, those awful ones. And actually, not 40. I'm sorry. I was thinking of Judah, and that's 38. Judah and Tamar. We did several chapters the last time we met. So we had Judah and Tamar, then we had Joseph and Potiphar's wife, and then we had the dreams, and then Joseph tells the wine cup bearer to remember him, but he forgot about him. The baker was hanged. The cupbearer went back to his old job and just thought, glad I kept my neck, glad I kept my head, and then didn't do anything. And then Pharaoh has a dream. And it is actually two dreams. He has one dream, and it's so bad that it wakes him up. And it is of the 7 beautiful cows and fat cows. And I don't know what makes a cow beautiful, and I don't know what makes a cow ugly, because it is 7 beautiful cows that come up out of the Nile, and they just eat, and they're fat, and they're big, and everything is great. And then these 7, as the text says, ugly cows come out, and they're all skinny and emaciated, but they eat the fat cows, and they don't get fat. And so that wakes him up. He doesn't understand that. Then he has the same dream again, but it is with wheat. He has good wheat that comes up, and then there is blighted wheat that comes up, and it eats. How does one plant eat another? I'm not sure, but that's his dream. Look, I have strange dreams too. I'm sure you have at various times, or things like that. I was talking to a friend of mine, another friend who is multilingual, speaks a couple of different languages, and I said, what language do you dream in? And they told me it was Spanish, and that when they dreamt, everyone in their dreams spoke Spanish, even people that they know who don't speak Spanish. So I speak Spanish in somebody else's dreams, I guess, if I'm in their dream. I don't know. So he has this, and nobody can interpret Pharaoh's dream. And so the cupbearer remembers, hey, you know what? There was this young man who was running the prison that I was in when you got mad at me. I'm betting he's saying that. There was a little bit of time where I spent some time in the prison. Probably didn't want it. You maybe wanted to tiptoe around that with Pharaoh. But there was somebody who could interpret the dreams. And so Joseph comes and interprets the dream. And he tells them 7 years of plenty, 7 years of lean or famine. And he tells them it's going to be a worldwide famine. Now, that's important that he notes that. Now, for the Egyptians, the world ended at their borders. It's really kind of fascinating to me that every culture that rose to prominence in the ancient world, and still current nations that are prominent, think that they're the best and everybody else is awful. So, like the Romans, when they came on the scene, it was Romans and everybody else was a barbarian. For Judaism, you were a Jew or you were Goyim, which means barbarian. The words that the Japanese use for anyone not Japanese means barbarian. All kinds of groups do all of those kinds of things. It's just a side thing that I've always been fascinated by. All right, so verse 37. Oh, well, and here's what Joseph says. So what you need to do, Pharaoh, is you need to stockpile food so that every time you harvest in the years of plenty, you set some aside so that you are ready when the famine takes place. And that's what happens. It's led some to think at first that there were people who they read the biblical story, they understood that, and they started thinking that maybe that's what the pyramids were. Well, first off, the pyramids were not built in 7 years. None of them were. They took decades to build. And their burial, they're memorials to kings, the Valley of the Kings, which is where a bunch of them are. I've never been there. Melba, did you go to Egypt on your trip? They stopped doing that about the time I went to Israel. You could do an extension to Jordan, but not to Egypt. And I'm not going to Egypt. I just know right now it's not a good time to go there. It's not a good time to go anywhere in those areas. Yeah, many places I don't want to go. So, so we don't know how they were storing it, but what we do know is that in arid places you can store grain for long periods of time. There was a storage chamber that was discovered in Masada. I mean, they just didn't look, but they were excavating all around there, and they excavated a room where there were food stores that were there, and they opened them up in the middle of the last century, and they were still good. They were still edible, which is just wild. But because you don't have humidity and you could store, and it wasn't in a Ziploc bag, but it's in clay and things like that, but they sealed it too so that they had those stores there. So he suggests that Pharaoh do this. Right? Verse 34, he says, "Let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land and take 1/5, that's 20%, of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plenteous years. Let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming and lay up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities, and let them keep it. That food shall be a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to befall the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine." Right? Now this says just Egypt, but we know it's worldwide, and we're going to see how that unfolds. The proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find anyone else like this, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has shown you all this, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only with regard to the throne will I be greater than you." So Joseph has gone from being a thrown in the cistern at 20 to being held as a prisoner for about 20 years or so, to now he is made second in command. Talk about a rags to riches story, right? But he's rich, who's now been put in rags, and now he's going to become very rich again. But he's going to have to do, one of the things that's going to be crucial and critical for him that will come into play later is that he will have to act as an Egyptian. He will have to dress like one, speak like one, and be like one, where the Egyptians were clean shaven. The Israelites were not. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I've set you over all the land of Egypt." Removing his signet ring from his hand, Pharaoh put it on Joseph's hand. He arrayed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in the chariot of his second in command, and they cried out in front of him, "Bow the knee." Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent, no one shall lift up hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. He's making him basically co-Pharaoh. He's allowing him to do everything. Now, who's Pharaoh? We don't know exactly. We don't know which Pharaoh this is. We don't know how old Pharaoh is. That has led some commentators to think Pharaoh could be very young, because the role of Pharaoh was hereditary. We know that some of them were very young. Cleopatra, hundreds of years, thousands of years later, Cleopatra will marry her brother. I don't think it was consummated, because he's 9. But she marries him because he's Pharaoh. And then he dies mysteriously. And she marries the next brother, who's 7. And guess what happens to him? He dies. Boy, those Pharaoh boys are really having trouble. But, but that happened. That would happen. Sometimes Pharaoh would have co-rulers, a male figure, or in one case, we know of one female who played the role of Pharaoh, with a false beard even. Now, Pharaoh could have a beard, but it was kind of that, you've seen, it's a goatee. You've seen King Tut, right? And all those things. By the way, King Tut was only like 14 or 15 when he died. Murdered. Cracked on the skull. Also, what we know is that many of the kings, the pharaohs, which are kings, many of them were married to family members. And so their genes were weakened. And, it's kind of like the kings in Europe would intermarry among themselves, and they were all related to each other over and over and over again. Queen Victoria had people who, her grandchildren were ruling like 4 countries in the early part of the 20th century. In Germany and in England, that was fighting each other. They were cousins. I don't know if you all know that. And Russia as well. That's right. And the czars. That's why they had things like hemophilia. Their chins were weird looking, and there were birth defects that came about because of that intermarrying. We know that was also part of the case. King Tut, when you read his autopsy, which is done thousands of years later, but it reads like a lot of maladies and a lot of illnesses and things, clubfoot and deformities and things like that. So Joseph is placed second in charge. Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Zephethna Paneah, and he gave him Asenath, daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, as his wife. Thus Joseph gained authority over the land of Egypt. That priest, the name is related to Potiphar. Sounds a lot like it. Probably not, but he marries her. What you have to understand is Egypt practiced polytheism. The priests were very powerful, and and the way you ruled as a pharaoh is you had the religion as part of your being able to rule. You had to get along. There was a pharaoh who rejected the polytheism and worshipped. He became a monotheist, one god. But it was still a sun god kind of thing. But and in fact, this was King Tut's grandfather, by the way, I think. And what happens is, when he dies, people go try and chisel his name out because he was an embarrassment, because they went back to the old ways. It's Amakanana or something like that. I can't remember their names, but he was he died, he ruled, and when he died, everyone then spoke out against him because of the way he ruled, which was he marginalized the priests and their temples and kind of let them fall into disrepair. And so the next one who came to that throne built those all back up and continued to do that. Okay, well, I said he was 40, but I misspoke. I'm sorry, he's 30. So for 10 years he's been there. 10, 12 years, because he was 18 when some of this started and they ran him out. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt. During the 7 plenteous years, the earth produced abundantly. He gathered up all the food of the 7 years when there was plenty in the land of Egypt and stored up food in the cities. He stored up in every city the food from the fields around it. This is Amazon before there's Amazon. They had distribution centers. You put it in the city. Instead of bringing it all in one place, you just put it where it's convenient, and then the people can eat. But they have to watch and ration out what they need later on. He stored up. So Joseph stored up grain in such abundance, like the sand of the sea, that he stopped measuring it. It was beyond measure. Lots and lots and lots of food. So there are 2 things going on. One is God is blessing Egypt because of Joseph. At least that's what we think. And Joseph is being blessed because he's Joseph. Seriously, God had favor with Joseph. God blessed those who treated Joseph well. So I can only imagine what happened to Mrs. Potiphar. Probably not good. And the other thing is that his brothers are benefiting because of who their dad is. But it's not going to go well for them. And we'll see what happens. Before the years of famine came, Joseph had 2 sons, whom Manasseh, daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph named the firstborn Manasseh. For he said, God has made me forget all my hardship and all my father's house. The second he named Ephraim. For God has made me fruitful in the land of my misfortunes. All right, so during those 7 years of plenty, he has 2 sons. Those sons' names should be familiar because they wind up being tribes later on. And the reason why they are tribes is because you have 12 tribes of Israel, which are all named for the sons of Jacob, whose name is changed to Israel. But you look at it and go, well, there's no name Joseph, because Manasseh and Ephraim are Joseph's tribe. Well, then why aren't there 13? Well, because one of the sons, Levi, doesn't get a tribe because his line becomes the priestly family, the priestly line, and they are to live not in one space, but spread out all through all of the other 12 tribes. So Manasseh and Ephraim will become actually quite large too. Those tribes will become large. One will be so large they get both sides of the river Jordan. They get land on one side, but they also take some on the other side as well. Okay. So he's being fruitful. He's having children. He's even naming one, fruitful in the land of my misfortunes. The 7 years of plenty that prevailed in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began to come, just as Joseph had said. There was famine in every country, but throughout the land of Egypt there was bread. Because what's the main crop that every country was growing? Wheat. Because you make bread. Because bread is what you eat every day. You would bake bread. Ladies, every day you would bake bread. Just enough bread for the day, because it would not keep till the next day generally. So you baked your bread, you ate your bread, got up the next day and started all over again and did it. Men, we went out and farmed wheat. That's what we did. Now, there were some other things too, barley and all that, and probably rye maybe too. I don't know about that, but wheat. Now, the word bread in Hebrew is lahem. The word for food is lahem, because bread was associated with food. So you just call it food, because you ate bread at every meal. I know, and I prove it, because I've got the carbs to prove it. Somebody said, for those of you at home, somebody said nothing wrong with that, with eating bread, except the bread we get is not as healthy for us, although we try. So, since the famine had spread all over the land, Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the world came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, because the famine became severe throughout the world. So do we understand what's going on? All right, now at this point, if he's 30 when he's put in charge, he's had 10 years of slavery. He's 30. Now he's gone through the 7 years of plenty. So he's at least 37. Now we're getting into the famine years. We don't know how long. We're going to figure that out. We're going to kind of keep going. Any questions on the rest of 41, chapter 41? Comments? Any comments? Others, aside from, I like bread. You know, when I was a kid, there was only one brand of bread that we ate. Yep. I can't say the name online because I don't want to give advertising, but it was very plain and very white bread. I eat wheat bread now. My wife would like me to eat more of other things. I like sourdough, though, which is supposed to be good for you, but it also doesn't keep very long. I like it, too. There's an Amish place over in Sarasota. We buy it. Oh. So, verse 1 of chapter 42. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you keep looking at one another?" I like this. What are you doing just staring at each other? "I have heard," he said, "that there is grain in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Joseph did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin, or Benjamin, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might come to him. Why would he fear that harm might come to Benjamin? He loved him, exactly right, Barbara. He loved Benjamin because he was the only child left that Rachel had bore. Remember Rachel, the beautiful one, the one that Jacob loved. I always feel bad for Leah. And in his mind, Joseph's been lost. He's dead. And he doesn't want to lose Benjamin. So, but the other 10, yeah, go. But they're grown men, right? They're in their 40s, maybe even their 50s, maybe even close to 60 in a couple of cases. So they're going to go and get grain. What's that, Mike? They're ancient, yeah. I feel that way. I still remember the first time somebody said, "Sir." I was on my first car date. I was 16, and I dropped a quarter. I was standing at the jukebox, and I dropped a quarter, and this little kid kept saying, "Sir, sir, sir." And I'm looking around. "What? You, mister?" I'm like, "My father, sir, not me." "What do you want?" "You dropped this." And he handed me the quarter. I let him pick a song, because that was the time where you got 3 selections for a quarter. Then I regretted what he picked. So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. Thus the sons of Israel were among the other people who came to buy grain, for the famine had reached the land of Canaan. So what you have going on is they've got food, and everybody hears, because good news travels just as well as bad news. And so now deals are being made. What's going to happen to Egypt? Their power increases. Their wealth increases. They've got grain. Because they didn't take a little bit of their bumper crop. They took 20% of their bumper crop. So they had a lot of grain that was stored. Now Joseph was governor over the land. It was he who sold to all the people of the land, and Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke harshly to them. "Where do you come from?" he said. They said, "From the land of Canaan, to buy food." Although Joseph had recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Why do you suppose that is? What's that? He'd grown up. They didn't expect to see him in that place. And they thought he was dead. All of those are probably right. Does anybody look like they did at 18? Because I don't. They haven't seen him for at least probably 20 years at this point. And people change. Plus, smooth face. Or he had a goatee type of thing like Pharaoh. And yes, here's the surprise. He is in... somebody just touched somebody's goatee. So, I'm sorry, it just threw me for a loop there a second. So, they don't expect him to be sitting in the place of honor. And they probably in their mind thought, well, we sold him off. He was a slave. Slaves don't fare well in our societies anymore. Our society, so he's probably dead. So they weren't looking for Joseph. They weren't expecting to see Joseph. Which means that they forgot everything about Joseph, including what? What dreams did he interpret? His own dream? That they'd be bowing down before him. What are they doing? Bowing down before him. Although Joseph had recognized his brother, they did not recognize him. Joseph also remembered the dreams that he had dreamed about them. He said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said to him, "No, my lord. Your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men." Yeah, he knows better. "Your servants have never been spies." But he said to them, "No, you have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said, "We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of a certain man in the land of Canaan. The youngest, however, is now with our father, and one is no more." And that leads us to think that really they did think he was dead. One is no more. Well, to them, he is dead. But you like my little comment. We're honest men. Yeah, he knows better. These are his brothers who put him in the cistern, who then sold him for 20 shekels to a caravan. They're awful? Yeah. What could he have done to them here? Refuse to sell to them and have them killed or throw them in prison. Who is the only person who can overrule Joseph? Pharaoh. But what does Pharaoh do? He defers to Joseph's decisions. He lets him be. But Joseph said to them, "It is just as I have said to you, you are spies. Here is how you shall be tested. As Pharaoh lives, you shall not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Let one of you go and bring your brother, while the rest of you remain in prison, in order that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you or else. As Pharaoh lives, surely you are spies." And he put them all together in prison for 3 days. On the third day, Joseph said to them, "Do this and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here where you are imprisoned. The rest of you shall go and carry grain for the famine of your households. And bring your youngest brother to me. Thus your words will be verified, and you shall not die." And they agreed to do so. Did they have a choice? They said to one another, "Alas, we are paying the penalty for what we did to our brother." So they do remember Joseph, and they've got shame and guilt. This is where they're thinking, what's that word? Karma. What went around has now come around. We didn't like our brother, the tattletale. We sold him into slavery. We wanted to kill him. And he's probably dead, and here we are now in trouble. Now, what I also wonder is, which of them was thinking, who of us is going to tell Father that Benjamin has to come with us? They said to one another, "Alas, we're paying the penalty for what we did to our brother. We saw his anguish when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. That is why this anguish has come upon us." Then Reuben answered them, "Did I not tell you not to wrong the boy?" This is the ultimate "I told you so." "But you would not listen. So now here comes a reckoning for his blood." They did not know that Joseph understood them, since he spoke with them through an interpreter. He turned away from them and wept. Then he returned and spoke to them, and he picked out Simon, and he had him bound before their eyes. Joseph then gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to return every man's money to his sack, and give them provisions for their journey. This was done for them. So he put their money back in their bags. That's odd. But we'll see how that plays out. So he puts the money back. He picks Simeon, and he puts him in prison, waiting for the others to come back. They load their donkeys with their grain and departed. When one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money at the top of the sack. He said to his brothers, "My money has been put back. Here it is in my sack." At this they lost heart and turned trembling to one another, saying, "What is this that God has done to us?" Why do you think they're frightened? Because Joseph now has, though they don't know his name, they only know him by his Egyptian name, because he could legitimately say they left and didn't pay the bill. They kept their money. They took our grain. What do you think the punishment was for theft in ancient Egypt? You know, every offense started with death and worked its way down. That's right. Well, the Code of Hammurabi, which is also an ancient legal code, said a thief, if you stole, you lost a hand. If you stole a second time, you lost another hand. And if you could figure out how to steal a third time, you lost your life. The ultimate 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out. But I can just, I mean, do you feel the palpable fear that they've got going on here? So let's recount what the fear is. One, Joseph thinks they don't know him as Joseph. The second in command of Egypt thinks they're spies. They have to go back and tell their dad, we've left Simeon and we need to bring Benjamin to get Simeon out. One potato, two potato. Who's, rock, paper, scissors. Who's going to tell dad? And now they've opened up the grain and they find the money. Yeah, they're in trouble. And the day of reckoning has come, right? When they came to their father Jacob in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them, saying, the man, the Lord of the land, spoke harshly to us and charged us with spying on the land. But we said to him, we are honest men. We are not spies. Again, we are honest men. In the words of Shakespeare, methinks thou doth protesteth too much. Right? We're honest, guys. We're honest, Dad. Yeah, well, they've lied to their dad before, haven't they? We are honest men. We are not spies. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is now with our father in the land of Canaan. Then the man, the Lord of the land, said to us, by this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me. Take grain for the famine to your households and go your way. Bring your youngest brother to me, and I shall know that you are not spies, but honest men. Then I will release your brother to you, and you may trade in the land. All right? So they're telling their dad this. They're at least being honest with him at this point. Verse 35. Any questions up to that point? Verse 35. As they were emptying their sacks, there in each one sack was his bag of money. Okay, so it wasn't just one of them. They all have their money. When they and their father saw their bundles of money, they were dismayed. And their father Jacob said to them, I am the one you have bereaved of children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and now you would take Benjamin? All this has happened to me. Then Reuben said to his father, you may kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you. But he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he alone is left. If harm should come to him on the journey that you are to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol. So Jacob didn't want to let him go. He didn't want to kill his grandsons. Reuben is the oldest, and Reuben has been stepping up, but he keeps quiet. He doesn't tell his dad what they did to Joseph. Remember, he was angry with his brothers. He just said, put him in the cistern, we'll deal with him later, meaning he was going to get him out, but they went and got him out and sold him before Reuben could get back. So Reuben puts himself on the line. You can have my sons, Dad. I'll make sure Benjamin gets back. And he still says, nope, they probably already, in Jacob's mind, he's lost Joseph, and he's probably already lost Simeon. Why would I give up Benjamin? And he doesn't say it, but he infers it. His favorite.
Well, he was also the youngest.
He was the baby. But he was also Rachel's child. It's the last connection he has with the woman he loved, who died giving life to this child. Now the famine was severe in the land. We'll see if we can get through. And when they had eaten up the grain that they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, "Go again, buy us a little more food." But Judah said to him, "The man solemnly warned us, saying, 'You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. If you will send your brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, You shall not see my face unless your brother is with you.'" Israel said, that's Jacob, right? Israel. "Why did you treat me so badly as to tell the man that you had another brother?" They replied, "The man questioned us carefully about ourselves and our kindred, saying, 'Is your father still alive? Have you another brother?' What we told him was in answer to those questions." Remember, they're honest men. Ha ha ha. But here, Israel was reverting back to being Jacob for a second. Right? The crooked man. "Why did you have to tell him you had another brother?" Well, he asked us. He asked if you were alive. Could we in any way know that he would say, "Bring your brother down"? Then Judah said to his father, "Send the boy with me, and let us be on our way, so that we may live and not die, you and we, and also our little ones. I myself will be surety for him. You can hold me accountable for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. If we had not delayed, we would now have returned twice." Could have went and come back and went and come back. But Jacob wouldn't let Benjamin go, which really tells Simeon where he is in the pecking order. Because he's back languishing in the prison going, "Where's my dad? Where are my brothers?" So this is playing out a while. These are months. This is into at least the first year. It might even be into the second year of the famine. We don't know for sure. Then their father Israel said to them, "If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags and carry them down as a present to the man. A little balm and a little honey, gum, resin, pistachio nuts, and almonds." Oh gosh, I don't really like pistachio nuts. Almonds I'll eat. I can't read this section to Janine. She'll tell me it's biblical. You need to eat it. "Take double the money with you. Carry back with you the money that was returned in the top of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take your brother also, and be on your way again to the man. May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he may send back your other brother and Benjamin. As for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved." So the men took the present, and they took double the money with them as well as Benjamin. Then they went on their way down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. Now, do you suppose Benjamin is so protected that he started out with, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" I mean, he's the kid never let out of sight of his dad. And they are going to be responsible. Now, I want you to notice, who says he will be responsible for him? Judah. Judah has already been portrayed as an unscrupulous man. He doesn't honor the tradition with his daughter-in-law of giving his sons. He doesn't offer his son. He offers himself. "I will guarantee that he comes back safely. If I don't, then I die." So, in a sense, his sons are growing up. It's about time. They're acting a little bit more mature. But it really is about time. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal and make ready for the men to dine with me at noon," right? Midday lunch. Now the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house. They didn't see him where they had seen him before, which was some sort of throne room, his office. Now they're coming to his house. Now the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house, and they said, "It is because of the money replaced in our sacks the first time that we have been brought in, so that we may have an opportunity to fall, so that he may have an opportunity to fall upon us and make slaves of us and take our donkeys." Yeah, because he wants the donkeys. Not trying to be political, but I did see something that, there were a lot of people upset, but somebody was saying, something about Elon Musk wanting to steal. He's the richest man in the world. What could anyone have that he would want to steal unless he just wants more of it? It just doesn't make sense. Now, Joseph is the second richest man in the world right now. He's got control over everything in Egypt. Why would he need their donkeys? They don't think about it. Why aren't they thinking about it? Because they're scared to death. And they have every reason to be scared to death. Why do they have to be? Give me one or two. What they did to Joseph? Just one thing. What they did to Joseph. 2, that they didn't pay the money. 3, he might still think we're spies. And by the way, it took us a long time to come. We could have made this trip twice, but Dad wouldn't let Benjamin go. So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the entrance to the house. They said, "Oh, my Lord, we came down the first time to buy food. And when we came to the lodging place, we opened our sacks. And there was each one's money in the top of his sack, our money in full weight. So we brought it back with us. Moreover, we have brought down with us additional money to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks." He replied, "Rest assured, do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father must have put treasure in your sacks for you. I received your money." Then he brought Simeon out to them. When the steward had brought the men into Joseph's house and given them water, and they had washed their feet, and when he had given their donkeys fodder, they made the present ready for Joseph's coming at noon, for they had heard they would dine there. When Joseph came home for lunch, they brought him the present that they had carried into the house and bowed to the ground before him. He inquired about their welfare and said, "Is your father well, the old man of whom you spoke? Is he still alive?" They said, "Your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive." Now, didn't they learn something? Their dad said, "Why give him all this information?" Now they're saying, "Your dad, our father is alive." And they bowed their heads and did obeisance, meaning worship, to him. Then he looked up and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your youngest brother of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son." With that, Joseph hurried out because he was overcome with affection for his brother, and he was about to weep. So he went into a private room and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and controlling himself, he said, "Serve the meal." And they served him by himself and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. The Egyptians couldn't eat with the Hebrews because they found it offensive. When they were seated before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth, the men looked at one another in amazement. Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. So they drank and were merry with him. Why were they drinking and merry with Benjamin? Somehow he likes you. And he got extra. And they were eating it, the extra, most likely. Yeah. Dad liked you best, and now this Egyptian guy likes you best. What's going on here? Well, we have 6 minutes to figure some of that out. Then he commanded the steward of his house, fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the top of the sack. Put my cup, the silver cup, in the top of the sack of the youngest, with his money for the grain. And he did as Joseph told him. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away with their donkeys. When they had gone only a short distance from the city, Joseph said to his steward, "Go, follow after the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, 'Why have you returned evil for good? Why have you stolen my silver cup? Is it not from this that my Lord drinks? Does he not indeed use it for divination? You have done wrong in doing this.'" So it's a frame-up. And he put it in whose bag? Benjamin's. When he overtook them, he repeated these words to them. They said to him, "Why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants that they should do such a thing. Look, the money that we found at the top of our sacks we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. Why then would we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? We paid you. We brought more money. We paid you double this time. Should it be found with any one of your servants, let him die. Moreover, the rest of us will become my Lord's slaves." They didn't think to check the bags first, did they? Couldn't happen twice, could it? He said, "Even so, in accordance with your words, let it be. He with whom it is found shall become my slave, but the rest of you shall go free." Then each one quickly lowered his sack to the ground, and each opened his sack. He searched, beginning with the eldest and ending with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Dun, 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 dun. Right? This is... If somebody had a soundtrack with this, that's what it would be. At this, they tore their clothes. Then each one loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. They weren't going home, they went back. Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house while he was still there, and they fell to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, "What deed is this that you have done? Do you not know that that one such as I can practice divination?" And Judah said, "What can we say to my Lord? What can we speak? How can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Here we are then, my Lord's slaves, both we and also the one in whose possession the cup has been found." But he said, "Far be it from me that I should do so. Only the one in whose possession the cup was found shall be my slave. But as for you, go up in peace to your father." It wouldn't be in peace. Remember, they're honest men. Well, they had no idea this was going to happen. Verse 18. Then Judah stepped up to him and said, "O my Lord, let your servant please speak a word in my Lord's ear. And do not be angry with your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself. My Lord asked his servant, saying, 'Have you a father or a brother?' And we said to my Lord, 'We have a father, an old man, and a young brother, the child of his old age. His brother is dead. He alone is left of his mother's children, and his father loves him.' Then you said to your servants, 'Bring him down to me, so that I may set my eyes on him.' We said to my Lord, 'The boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die.' Then you said to your servants, 'Unless your youngest brother comes down with me, you shall see my face no more.' When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my Lord. And when our father said, 'Go again, buy us a little food,' we said, 'We cannot go down. If our youngest brother comes with us, will we go down? For we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us.' Then your servant, my father, said to us, You know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, and I said, surely he has been torn to pieces, and I have never seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm comes to him, you will bring down my gray hairs in sorrow to Sheol, which is the grave. Now therefore, when I come to your servant my father, and the boy is not with us, then as his life is bound up in the boy's life, when he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die, and your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant our father with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant became surety for the boy to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I will bear the blame in the sight of my father all my life. Now therefore, please let your servant remain as a slave to my Lord in the place of the boy, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the suffering that would come upon my father. Now, what we think about with the Joseph story earlier is that Judah is one of the ones saying, sell him. He has done a complete 180. We also see something here of some theological significance. Don't punish the boy. Punish me instead. Let me be a substitute for him. That's important theologically because one of the theories of the atonement, right, which is an atonement means to be make peace with God. And it's been the dominant theory over the last 2,000 years of the church, is something called the substitutionary atonement. Now, there are other views of the atonement, and some of them are quite fine. There's the moral view, and then there's Christus Victor, Christ's victory over sin and death, which are all true, but the one the church really hearkened on is that Jesus died in our place, that humanity was worthy of death on the cross, but that Jesus goes to the cross in our place as a substitute. And you see this theme in the Hebrew Scriptures when you take the people and you pray over the animals, and one is offered as a sacrifice on the day when when everything is sacrificed for sin, the day that's called Yom Kippur or Yom Kippur. But Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement. And you actually have 2 lambs. Well, 1 lamb and a goat. One is offered as a sacrifice. The other one is called the scapegoat. Scapegoat, where the priest will pray over the lamb, confession of sins. The lamb is then slain. The goat is prayed over and then driven out as sin, being driven out into the wilderness. These are metaphors, but this is what happened. That was part of the religious life. And so what we have here is Judah saying, my father will drop dead if we go back and Benjamin's not with us. And none of us want to be responsible for that. I will stay in the boy's place. Do with me what you want. Now, this is the instigator of selling Joseph into slavery. That's why Joseph is doing this. It's not to be cruel to his brothers, but it is to see if they have changed and how much they've changed. I'm sure Simeon at this point is going, whew, it's not me. I've been in that prison for a while. Judah's willing to go. And then we're going to see what happens next week when we go to chapter 45. We're actually going to slow down a little bit because there's some theological stuff to unpack. But that's important that Judah has a change of heart, but also that Judah wants to go in the place of Benjamin? I could see the wheels turning in his mind saying, actually, it was my bag, not his. He was carrying it for me. You know, there's something. He was the surety to his father that no harm would come to Benjamin. Huh? Well, it wasn't him. That wasn't him. That was Reuben who said, my sons will die in their place. But Israel, Jacob, wouldn't, no, he would have none of that. And in his mind, he'd already lost two sons. He lost Joseph and he lost Simeon. I don't need to lose any more. But that famine is going on, and it's a worldwide famine. So nothing's growing. They can't feed their animals. They can't feed themselves. Better go back to Egypt, buy some more. We can't go unless we take Benjamin. They had Israel, Jacob, over a barrel. And remember, they're honest men. They keep saying that. We're honest men. They're going to become honest men. And they just proved that. We're going to stop at this point today. We ask that you would continue to pray for those who have been on our prayer list. Denny Vogel had surgery and did well. But he's going to have some more, either another one tomorrow or Friday. Tom Duncan had a procedure on Monday, and he should be home sometime today. And it went well. I had a message from Mary that it went well, and they're hoping to get back to church soon too. They hope it'll help. So let us close in prayer today. Gracious God, we thank you. We praise you. We ask, O Lord, that you would be with us as we part. Remind us of the depths of Judah's love for his father, that he would not want him to lose Benjamin. He might not have liked it, but he was willing to go instead of Benjamin. Be with us as we come together next week, as we study. We pray these things in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you. Have a great day. And remember, God loves you. This church loves you. And I love you as your pastor. And we'll see you on Thursday for the Daily Word. And then hopefully on Friday for the fellowship meal. Or Sunday for church service. God bless you. Bye now. Yeah, there's